Today, my guest on the Conscious Fertility podcast is Garnet Dupuis. He is a fellow Canadian from Ontario. I'm over in BC, living in Thailand now. And full transparency, we did an interview several weeks ago, maybe over a month ago, and we geeked out. We went about 2.5, almost 3 hours. And he's been so gracious for us to get on again. Rather than having my team edit out 3 hours of content down to about an hour, we agreed to have another conversation to make this material and information, which I think is really important, available to our listeners. So, Garnet, welcome back.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you very much.
And for our listeners, welcome to Garnet, because it's the first time you're meeting him. I know, Garnet, you don't really like to hear about yourself. It's an uncomfortable thing, but I am going to just let our audience know so you can plug your ears and just tell them a little bit about yourself here. So Garnet, he's an integrative and complementary wellness professional with a career that has quietly spanned several decades. Back in the 1970s, I was alive then. He has been on a journey of exploration, delving into the fields of light, sound, and consciousness. I think that's what's drawn me to you, Garnet, as well. I've always had an affinity and appetite for spirituality, consciousness, I don't know what you want to call it, altered states, extraordinary states. And Garnet's work initially has been inspired by the human potential movement during his academic years in Canada, and that inspiration has continued to guide his path. And today he serves as the chief creative officer and co-founder of Lucid Studios in Thailand, so he gets to live in beautiful Thailand, where he focuses on developing the VIZR. And these are instruments designed to foster positive neuroplastic changes in the brain, which we're going to dive into. He views life as a spiritual journey. Again, this is why I'm drawn to want to talk to you, placing a deep emphasis on compassion and personal awakening. And outside his professional work, he is dedicated to wildlife rescue and conservation in eastern Chiang Mai, Thailand, where he manages a gibbon sanctuary. These are apes, right?
Great.
I learned something. So for our listeners, when we met last time, I called them monkeys, and I almost lost Garnet. He almost left the podcast. And so his academic background is diverse, including studies in classical and clinical homeopathy, Chinese medicine, psychology, and other fields. And basically, he believes that breakthroughs in mental health and wellness technologies like the NeuroVIZR, which we're going to talk a bit about today, can help individuals lead richer, more fulfilling lives by making extraordinary mental states accessible and integrating their benefits into everyday life. So welcome to the Conscious Fertility Podcast, Garnet.
Thank you very much. Whatever you call it, consciousness, spirituality, wellness, insight, all these words. For me, I've tried to find out what's common in a simple word or language, and it's special. Then I have a second word, the word change. These two things from my earliest memories to this moment now with you here motivate me, magnetize me, mystify me. What makes special special? And what relationship does it have with the experience of change? So that's a perspective.
Okay.
And according to your perspective, there are perceptions. So how do we perceive all of this? That's my lofty, maybe philosophical view. So I was, driving in. I have an office here in Chiang Mai, Thailand, as you've mentioned, and I keep an apartment nearby. My main home is up in the mountains, a little bit too far away to drive every day. And I was driving in, zing, 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 and I was thinking, about change. And these days there are more and more devices, even personal or consumer devices, that can measure different kinds of change. And although I'll say our interest in this case is generalized to the whole being. In this case, let's target in on the brain. Let us not spend another 3 hours exploring what is mind. We'll kind of put that aside.
Right.
But we have a brain. And the good news is that science is right in declaring that science has been wrong. I think one of the purposes of science is to investigate when science is wrong. And one of the things that science has been wrong about that has changed is the idea that the adult brain, when you get it, you got it, and all it can do is die. You might remember information saying as an adult, you have a limited number of brain cells and they just die one by one, something like that. We know that's not true. Well, it's partially true and partially wrong. We call it neuroplasticity. And I think most of us are generally aware of something about keeping your brain healthy even when you're an adult and how that's really important. So let's first look at the simple concept of brain change. There is short-term change, long-term change. That can either be positive or negative. So, change is, to me, change is like fire. It is what it is. And you can cook food and keep warm, or you can, burn your hand, or in the tragedy of Southern California right now, that same fire can destroy a community. So fire is fire, change is change. So how do we know if we can change in a good way? I have a concept that a brain that can change when change is required is a healthy brain. I don't believe that there's an idealized state. Like once you get that state, you'll be fine forever. I don't believe that. I think that there are a multitude of states. And for our brain, being able to navigate changes is critically important. So I was thinking, okay, without getting too fancy, as you say, geek out, which to me is not geek, it's like poetry, but okay. I was thinking three kinds of basic change. There's this state called awake, and there's this state called asleep. And we need to make the change from waking to sleeping and sleeping to waking on a very regular basis. Can we make that basic change? I'm tired. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to sleep now. I've slept a lot. I'm okay. I'm going to open my eyes and be awake. A lot of us have problems at that fundamental circadian shift from wake to sleep, sleep to wake. What other kind of basic metric can we use without a fancy device to measure ourselves? Now I'm focused, I'm doing a task. Now I'm relaxed and breathing deep and letting go. The ability to focus and relax and then focus again and then relax again. That ends up being a bit tricky. I think that one of the things that I've noted, in my personal life and my professional life over time, because I've been a meditator my whole life, whatever that means, and the ability to deeply relax and remain lucid or remain conscious, that's pretty tricky stuff.
Yeah.
Like, okay, right now, Lauren, just relax. Okay, we're talking, but that's okay, right? And get more relaxed, let go more, but stay lucid, aware, and awake. Stay conscious. That's actually pretty difficult. Like I'm going to go over sit in a chair now, whether you call it meditate, because maybe you think it's about focusing, or meditate, maybe you think it's about letting go. So the first big can you change thing is awake, asleep, awake. The second is focus in a task, do it, relax, kick back, don't do it. That kind of change. Then the third kind, which is a little bit more kind of ephemeral, I guess, is the change in emotions. Can you be calm, then concerned, then worried, then angry, and then relaxed again? Can we move in and out of different emotional states? Can it be a flowing experience as opposed to a cemented experience? Are we getting stuck in a certain mood? So I thought, it'll be fun because I like being with you and speaking with you. And I thought, what can we explore? We'll put special on the back burner for the moment, and this thing called change. So that's, that fascinates me. And the device, thank you for mentioning it, the NeuroVIZR is a light and sound brain stimulation device. And I would say, like, why use it? Well, one, it's a lot of fun. I can say I enjoy it quite a lot. And maybe because there's something special. Whoop, I dropped that word again. But what's the purpose of it? The purpose fundamentally is to exercise the brain in making changes, going into the change, out of the change, short term, or building changes over the long term. So we have short-term state shift or long-term trait shaping. State shift, trait shaping. One is more, I guess you could say, momentary or short-term, and the other is more long-term. The last thing I have to say, and I want you to talk with me so I just don't lecture, is that we have to remember our brain is physical. Whatever concept we have of mind, and I have plenty of concepts like you, but we know that our brain is as physical as our heart and our hamstring. So just about everything, maybe not everything, but just about everything we need to know about our brain, we've already learned with our soma, with our body as a whole, that what we do repeatedly, basically the body says, okay, if that's what you want, that's what I'll do. So, okay, so that's my semi-thoughtful drive to the office reflection to start with you.
On special. So I'm going to kind of summarize or repeat back what I've heard and share with you,
Mhm.
which is of great interest because a lot of people that seek me out, some literally say, I want to change these patterns. I have these
Mhm.
patterns, emotional patterns. I'm always triggered, or I'm always irritable, or I can't focus, right?
Mhm.
I'm looking to
Right.
have creativity. I don't sleep well. So the NeuroVIZR has been interest because I like to I'll take a Star Trek reference here. Like the Borg, I find things and I assimilate them into my
Awesome,
life.
awesome, awesome collection of episodes with the Borg.
Yes,
Right,
absolutely. And
right.
so they assimilate, right? And so I look for any tool or device, safe, non-invasive as much as possible, drug-free, that can support this kind of change shift that people are looking for. And so
Mhm.
this idea that if you can do something like the NeuroVIZR, which is non-invasive, non-drug, and fun, like I look forward to using it. And the clients that I see like to use it, right? It is entertaining for the brain at some point.
It
It's at
is.
some points of the process. People have described it as heaven's entered my brain. I feel like something's tickling my brain. For those that have
Mhm.
done psychedelics, say, "Wow, it feels like I did a psychedelic trip there for a moment at a certain time."
Mhm.
So they find it quite entertaining. But they're looking for that. They're looking for more focused clarity, so
Sure.
they can have that creativity. They're looking to find some sleep and that deep relaxation that you're talking about, where they're really into that relaxation. And this is the idea that you're sharing about this neuroplasticity, if I'm understanding it correctly, is one is our brains can become unstuck. We have a stuck brain, it can be unstuck.
Mhm.
And the other thing that I'd like you to elaborate on that. And the other
Sure.
thing you were sharing is the way you described it, if I say it back correctly, is a brain that can change is a healthy brain.
Yeah.
And so
When change is required.
when change is required. So
Yeah.
being adaptability is key. Flexibility is strong.
Yeah.
Like the bamboo, it's flexible enough that you can bend it without breaking it, right? And so it's got to have that flexibility to be healthy. And I've heard you say in the past, comparing it to heart rate variability, right? A high heart rate variability, a heart that has variability, not just duh, 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 is a healthy heart, less chance of morbidity through heart attack. And it
Mhm.
sounds like the term I've learned from you is brain signal variability. The brain also needs that. And so it sounds like the device that you're using that does sound and light, and I'd like you to kind of geek out a bit on this, is
Mhm.
exercising the brain. It's giving it some adaptability. And my metaphor, when I sometimes explain it to the clients that I share this with in my practice, is because you talk about brain prime, brain time. So I want you to go into that as I share, like, you work out. So you're working out. And then after your workout, that's when all the muscle building happens, the repair and stuff. And so I
That's right.
get the sense the way you've set this up is the experience with the NeuroVIZR, that's you call brain prime. That would be like going to the gym, you're working out. And
That's
then
right.
after it ends, there's a couple of hours where you can have great focus. Like today, I used one of your programs before
Mhm.
we got on to get me into good focus mode. So
Okay.
I guess my question for you is why is this? What's the science behind it, and why does this work? Because when we see these flickering lights, the lights are white. There's 9 of them in the device I have
Mhm.
the NeuroVIZR current. I never know when people are listening. Maybe you have 20 years from now when somebody's listening to this. Right now, there's 9 lights on there, and they're
For those
white.
of you on Mars, right?
And they have a frequency, and it seems like our brains interpret that, and people see fractals and shapes and colors. So I get the intention is to help unstick the brain. And by unsticking the brain, it makes it a healthier brain, a brain that can adapt when needed to. And there's
Mhm.
focus and calm and sleep. My question is, how is this doing that for the brain? I'm curious about that part.
You got 3 hours? No, we don't. Okay. So, thank you because yes, you have been listening and learning. The different terms and concepts are key to a lot of what we're doing here. Brain signal variability is not discussed much. It's a relatively new and critically important understanding about us, about the organism. You refer to heart rate variability, which more people know. There are devices that measure it these days. You're correct. The time between each beat should vary some amount as a reflection of how responsive is your autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Maybe you've been, this is the lead into the BSV, by the way. Maybe you've been to a doctor, maybe Lauren's done it, I don't know, where they put a stethoscope on your back. He said, what do you, my back? Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. And it's like, well, that's weird, you know. It's usually is for my whatever. What's happening here? Because when you inhale, your heart rate should increase, and when you exhale, your heart rate should decrease. And there's a particular fund that they're just checking out. Do you have a heart that is at least able to respond to stimulation of inhalation and the relaxation of exhalation? So heart rate variability, and now we're quite sophisticated with it, is a measure of the degree of adaptability. When change is required, your heart is making a change because your nervous system is making a change. Okay, wow, that's different. We have been putting mechanical physics of machines and trying to put it into understanding the organism. You know, my car, it's fuel, not electric. You know, the piston should be at a regular rate. Or if you have a sub pump, you know, a basement and it's flooded, you have a pump to pull it out. You don't want the pump sound to be or my pistons in my car. We want it to be very regular. So if we think that our heart is a pump, there's a good mechanical analogy. We think, well, that pump should be regular. Guess what? Science was wrong. Now we realize it should be variable. That is also true of the brain, except it's a lot more complicated. There are lots of different aspects of variability in the brain. Okay, so the heart needs to change when change is required, even at simple beat, and our brain needs to change when change is required. I'll give you a quick analogy. I like analogies. Let's imagine that our brain is a 20-story building. You own the whole building. It's called your brain. That's where you do work. It's also where you have your bed and relax. 20 floors. It's an analogy. It's not mathematically true, but pretty good as a concept. The low floors, starting at 1, are very ordered. They have a lot of stability there. And you go all the way up to the top floor, maybe the penthouse, and there is a lot of dynamic shifting and changing. It's a lot of flexibility. So you go from the first floor of stability to the highest floor of flexibility. And there's an elevator, fortunately, and you can go up and down according to what you want to do, because you have your business in that building. You have tasks to do. You have also places to kick back and relax. And then you've got places to explore and experiment, problem solve. So I think I don't know if we did this little game, but let's pretend we didn't if we didn't. That whole building, there's one of the floors where you live. It's your bedroom, you know, it's your living room. What floor from 1 to 20 do you think should be your home? What would you guess?
If it's my brain,
Yeah,
and
it's your
and the bottom floor is very task oriented,
ordered. It's not,
very
they're
ordered,
different, very
and
ordered, very habituated, very predictable, very repetitive. And the 20th floor is the opposite of that. Very loose, experimental, you know, non-committal, curious.
depending
Where
if
would
it
you?
was a stairs or elevator, because it may make a difference how
Elevator.
easy it is to go up and down. But I'm thinking in my brain, there is no, from hearing you earlier, I'm speaking as I'm thinking. Some people would probably want to be in that that high state, but I think it's about flexibility. So you want to be able to go up and down. So I'm assuming you want to be somewhere near middle. And I think flexibility has strength over rigidness, fixed. So if it's
Uh-huh.
20 floors, somewhere between 10 and 20, and maybe 15. So I have some room to go up and down.
All right, so you're a mind reader, obviously, or you're a smart guy. Maybe you're both. Yeah, in the analogy, let's not mistake this for actual, you know, brain measurement, but this has been measured quite a lot. Yeah, 15th floor,
Oh,
not in the middle.
okay. Not,
Yeah,
yeah.
you win.
Well, because it's
You
too
win.
far to go up and down. You're right in the middle. And I kind of want to live. The reason I chose 15 is I value more the flexibility than I do the rigid part, right? But I need the
Okay,
rigid part. So that's my
Okay.
thinking. I don't know why did they choose 15 or why do you say 15?
Okay. First of all, let's not use switch the word stable to rigid.
Okay.
So we'll look more closely at that. That's important. Yeah, the lower floors have increased stability, which means that they are reliable. It's more predictable. It's the result of a lot of things that you have learned. So
Right.
that's positive.
Hmm.
It also can be negative in terms of habituation or misconception or protection. If you are low in the stable too much, too long, that stability can become rigidity. So you're right. But stable is not bad. Stable is like you need that. Otherwise, you're insane. You're crazy. You've lost it. We need a good reference of learned behavior.
Yeah, and,
So,
and a good example is our world, when you look at politics, does not look very stable and it does not feel good. So yes, we stability. Now I understand when you say stability is good. We want stability. Got it.
yeah, yeah, okay. And then on the top, when you go to flexibility, if you are up there too much or
Mhm.
push it too far, the flexibility becomes volatility. It's volatile. It's hyper reactive and very unpredictable. You know, like when somebody's flipping out,
Mhm.
their behavior can be quite unpredictable. They can jump out a window, they can run at you, they can throw their arms and kiss you or stab you. And you know, like what's happening here? So we want to not have the extremes. We don't want to be so stabilized that we become rigid. Also, we don't want to be so flexible that we become volatile.
Right.
So, like in most things, up and down the elevator is important. However, you don't want to be fixed or stuck. In neurofeedback, it's called fixated. I like to say stuck because it's kind of easy to imagine. There is no brain state, there's no floor that you want to be on forever.
So I want to touch on that point, but before, with your analogy, can you explain why it was floor 15 then? Because
Yes.
if you want balance and not extreme, then why not 10? Why 15 versus
Okay.
10?
The only time we'll get balance is in death.
Okay.
That our to get into systems theory, we're called complex adaptive systems. We living forms like you and I and everything else are described as a far from equilibrium state. Far from equilibrium. That equilibrium, aka balance, is actually entropic death. That the yin and yang symbol, which is dear to you,
Mhm.
is not just a circle divided into half. It has that teardrop, and
Yeah.
within the black is the seed of the white, within the white is the seed of the black. What that shows is the dynamic relationship. Okay, just a minor bit of geek, because it's actually poetic. This 20-floor building brain analogy, this range relates to what's called criticality, criticality. And that's borrowed from physics. Critical is when there is a significant phase change. Water at room temperature, and then it starts to get chilled and keeps on going. And when it's cold enough, when it reaches a critical point, the fluid becomes a solid, the water becomes ice. So critical is the point of change, is critical. So this whole thing is called criticality. And the 15th floor is called, again, that's an analogy. The 15th floor is called the sweet spot of criticality. So there's a geeky term that's kind of poetic, the sweet spot of criticality. And why? Because the environment, internal and external, let's call it, the metabolic terrain or the external environment, can change at any point in time suddenly. And we need to be closer to flexible change, adaptation, than we are to stable habit. So, how we respond to the demand of change requires that we be disposed a little bit more towards that ability to change. Hence, the demands of the control freak, common term, the control freak that typically immediately responds with rigidity when it comes for a demand or a challenge, ends up being not very adaptive.
Can I
That
digress on
ability,
that point for a second? It's
absolutely.
really practical. My patients, my clients get to experience the NeuroVIZR quite a bit.
Hmm.
And there's three experiences. One that which makes me think of it is some of them are like, I
Hmm.
don't like this, and they want it off right away. Like they do not
That's right.
like it.
Hmm.
And they tend to be that type A person. So I'm just curious, have you observed that since you're in contact with a lot of people using your device, that person that doesn't want, when it sounds like the NeuroVisor is kind of pushing you, giving you a little bit of a, I've heard you use the word marginal demand, but
That's
somebody
right. Yeah.
somebody wants to be in control may find it difficult. Is that a generalization that you have seen, or am I missing the boat on that?
No, I think I think you're generally correct. There's a lot of nuance there, but
And then the other
I think
people
it's,
love it. That was the point. Is there's people
well,
like
yeah,
that
I
was
think it's,
the
yeah, it's reasonable to accept the fact that we are all different, but also pretty similar. I think one of as a person gets older, now I'm speaking for myself in this case, you start off thinking there's that word that you're special, then you realize actually you're pretty average. Most of the reactions and responses and challenges and joys that I have are shared with you. You kind of like get it. So with the NeuroVIZR, because it is provocative in the sense that it is a device that is designed based on neuroplastic methodologies. Okay, fancy stuff. What does that mean? Whatever the methodology for enabling the brain to change, whether short term or bit by bit long term, typically has three basic elements. We might have discussed it. Three basic design principles, and then a kind of a fourth secret sauce. The first thing is it requires, this is not just the NeuroVIZR, you can reflect in an open sense on this method. It requires attention, that this primal psychoactive agent called attention has to present itself for the method. To say that it's a focused attention makes it sound like there's effort, but that's not really it. If the attention is more like magnetic attention, like a mother looking into the face of her newborn baby, I don't think she's having to make effort to do that. It's a magnetic quality. So I'll say attention has to visit that process. The second thing, you've already mentioned it, is called marginal demand.
Okay.
So there has to be just a little bit of something, let's say weights. If you can lift 20 kilos, I'll give you 21. I'm not going to give you 30. There has to be a little bit of demand that is just marginal to your ability. So attention, marginal demand, an open-minded willingness, a faith or a belief that this is a good thing to do. As I say oftentimes, knowing what it's like
Mhm.
in some marriages, but that, shit, I'm doing this, my wife said, I got to come and do this thing with you. Okay, whatever. Just let's do it. Let's get it over with. That attitude doesn't work very well in the process. So attention, marginal demand, I'd say open-minded willingness. And then the secret sauce that makes all of those work better, that very complex neurochemical state called enjoy.
All
If
right.
you actually enjoy this, those three work better.
So I want to unpack that or just repeat that again. So focus attention. And so is that when you said it's kind of, there's not like big effort, the music and the light show, I feel like sometimes I'm just drawn to it. Is that what you mean? Like it seems like the device is grabbing my attention.
Yes, and it's designed to do that because of uniqueness. Our mind, our attention is drawn to uniqueness that even though pattern repetition is beautiful, your eye will catch when a pattern is broken. Your eye will go there. Hey, wait a minute, what's that?
Right.
So this is where we'll resist the other 2 hours on 1 hour of the detail. It's really elegant. This for me and for a lot of us, this is elegant information because, we humans, we think in terms of stories. We put together, connect the dot all the time because we're intelligent and we have concepts, so we make stories. And the story of neuroplasticity, the story of consciousness, the story of attention is just really elegant, sensitive, beautiful information because, well, it's us thinking about us, consciousness reflecting on consciousness. So the NeuroVIZR is meant to elicit those elements because I want that elevator in your brain working. I want you to be able to go up when you need to go up, down when you need to go down, be stable and habituate. Listen, when you go up, the whole point of going up is to explore. Let's just call it learning. You know, some of us have a real appetite for learning. Some of us maybe resist learning if it challenges our concepts. But the idea of learning is you encounter something new and different. And hopefully that information can then be incorporated into the lower floors of your 20-story building. Now you've got something you didn't have before and you want to use it. Right. So go up, go down, go up. That elevator is really, really important. And hopefully that's what different things, physical exercise does it too. There are lots of things that help you go up and down. And the NeuroVIZR happens to be one using what I call first language, the sound and light. It's not brain entrainment for those that have experienced that. It's brain engagement. It has a different principle. It does not use repetitive signaling to entrain the brain. Entrainment, which is not a bad or a good thing, it just is what it is, that it brings the brain into a particular more narrow corridor and attempts to help you stay there. Well, the benefit of brain engagement is that you get to choose the corridors that you want to visit, but you're not going to be stuck there. My last little image is sleeping in bed. I like to lay on my side, and I start off on my right side frequently, and it's really good. It's cozy. I love it. Weirdly, after a while, what was good becomes uncomfortable, and I want to go to my left side. And in between laying on my right and laying on my left is this fascinating, highly flexible, kind of unpredictable experience called rolling over. And rolling over, you start off, well, that's pretty easy, but then you do it, your leg gets stuck in the blanket, your pillow doesn't move, then it moves too much, and you go around in these upper floors in the 17th, 18th, and 19th floor, and then finally end up on your left side, and then you go back down, oh yeah, I'm gonna hang out in the 8th floor for a while, yummy, yummy. So the ability to change when change is required is not only true of the soma as a whole, but it's especially true of the complexity of the brain.
And in this process, when you talked about the principles, to be able to have the adaptability and go up and down with our analogy in this 20-story building and elevator, the way you do this with the visor, and there's other ways to do this, but the visors is focus attention, and then you have some marginal demand, so you push the brain a bit. Is this why it was my very first experience, and other people have had this experience, that when I first used it, I felt a little bit of anxiety came up and claustrophobic for few moments, and then it went away. And then at the end, I call it an amusement park for my brain. It felt like that.
Yeah.
But is that the marginal demand then, where you're pushing my brain a bit, so you're exercising it?
Yes. Okay, I'm older, and I don't exercise as much as I should. Duh, what a surprise. And like I don't do back bends. And then if I'm in my car, and this is experience, and something drops in the, like behind my seat, into the like, you know, the floor of the back seat, and I have to reach to get it, like a little bit of and sometimes the sound comes out of my mouth, you know, as I'm doing it, because I'm not used to doing it. So there is some marginal demand there. And if I would do back bends more often, it would probably be easier. I could change the position of my back when that position needs to change as required. That's the brain. So the initial elements, if a person can appreciate that this is it's a kind of exercise for my brain, and hopefully it's somewhat entertaining once you kind of get what's happening there. But there can be resistance. It brings up guardedness, you know, vigilance. It does all of that. But then once you're like, oh, this is, yeah, I don't do psychedelics anymore. I did in the past. I never had a bad experience in my life, so call me lucky. Or something. Okay, maybe again, I'll wax poetic here, but I've sometimes thought that I would like to approach my death in the way that I remember dropping a hit of acid and waiting to get off. I was so delighted. I was so got in love with, wow, it's just going to happen. It's just going to happen. And I get to explore and enjoy and that. So I hope, I mean, it's kind of an odd thing to say perhaps, but I hope that I can approach death with that same delight of discovery. For me, that was my experience. So I'm not saying good or bad, but change can be provocative. Change can be provocative. And one of the beauties about, yeah, I'm not pumping of the NeuroVIZR is that it's quite controllable. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. It's not molecules in your bloodstream. They're going to go wherever they want to go. And I think that's an advantage is it's kind of on, well, you have to let go to learn and change, but it's kind of on your own terms.
Yeah.
So earlier you mentioned brain prime and brain time. I'd like to talk a little bit about that
Yeah.
because brain prime is when the light and the sound thing is happening, and brain time is the period immediately following that. Sometimes I call it the lesson and the learning, the lesson and then the learning. The other more simple analogy is the light and sound is like eating food, and when you stop eating, you start digesting. So the famous word around psychedelic therapy these days, or even just general, is the concept of integration. That if you don't integrate, if you go to a psychotherapist, a psychologist, and you have a session, and then you walk out the door and you just negate and forget everything that happened, that's not the point. The point is not just, for me, the using the NeuroVIZR for fun, it's awesome. It's great. I'm boring. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke weed. I don't do cigarettes. I don't. It's like, what do I do when I feel like I want just really quick relief? Like people would, I like take a shot of tequila or something. I tasted it once. It was disgusting. I don't understand it. But anyway, like what can I do? So sometimes I'll just use it like that. But it may seem paradoxical or ironic or confusing, but I'll say that the real effects of a NeuroVIZR session begin when the light and sound end.
What you're calling
So,
is the integration of it.
well, yeah, because at that point, if you keep your eyes closed and you're just there, you've been shifted into a highly sensitized neurological state. It's called hyperplasticity. So plasticity meaning change, that you're at a sensitized information processing point. And the direction that I give, without being specific, is right then and there, simply feel what you feel. Feel, I'm not saying feeling, am I saying sensations or emotions or thought, whatever. Just feel what you feel. And importantly, now follow that feeling.
So
The
I'm going to,
follow means you're conjuring attention. You're going to, pardon me, you're going to be experiencing a subtle, complex, but very attractive body of sensation. That is always there, but you're not normally aware of it. It's the substratum of information processing. It's the substratum of metabolic processing going on. Feel what you feel and follow that feeling and follow it wherever it goes. Imagine that you're blind or your eyes are closed and somebody just takes you by the hand and they say, just follow me, and you're led. And at that point, people that have never been able to meditate find themselves in the depths of conscious experience that they may never have had before, or they did, and it's a revisiting, but with no effort. So right now, that brain prime or brain time, the lesson, the learning, that you get to feel what is there that is like a snake untying its own knot. You're going to feel yourself like body scanning and autogenics and all these things. That happens, and it's almost irresistible if you just give it a chance.
it sounds, I don't know if it's exactly or there's a
Mm-hmm.
parallel relationship, but it sounds like the priming using the visor, and then the moment it ends, where you say,
Mm-hmm.
just I'm not sure the words you use, but be aware, feel your feelings. Is it possible then that the NeuroVIZR gives you the possibility or probability to enter the present moment? Because that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like it to sound slick or something, but I'll say that with the NeuroVIZR, I try to trick you into the present moment.
Okay, well, that's cool because in my practice, I use this tool technique called notice, accept, choose again. And in the
Hmm.
surrender part is to get you into that present because that's where all potential is, the magic happens, where
Hmm.
resistance drops. So another reason why I've been, the drawn to this tool, this device, the NeuroVIZR, why I like it and use it in my
Hmm.
practice then. Because again,
Yeah.
when people say, "What are you doing with my NAC approach?" I always
Hmm.
say, "Have you ever read the book Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now?" Well, this is how
Hmm.
to now. So
I
it's
don't know. Okay, that's good. That's
because I was
cool.
like, that book's great. Now, how do I get there?
Oh, precisely. I mean, that is like s- awesome. How?
Yeah,
Yeah. Here's a nice little slick thing because, with the NeuroVIZR, following neuroplastic principles, the slogan is engage, enrich, enjoy.
yeah,
Engage, enrich, enjoy. So I have another one with the CH, and it starts off with change. If you change, you have a chance to make a choice. I used to have I had a pamphlet when I was in practice. I put on the front of the brochure, if you want things to be different, you're going to have to change. And you know that in practice, that your clients or your patients come in and they want something to be different, but they may not want to change.
right.
Well, like, listen, I'll change when things are different. No, I'm sorry.
When
It's the
you're
other way
different,
around.
yeah.
If you change, things can be
Yeah,
different.
the external world will change based on your perception of it when you change inside. And Joe Dispenza, he's written a few books, runs workshops of consciousness, and I really like it. His way, the way he said it, or the way I understood it, is your personality creates your personal reality. If you take your
Okay.
current personality into the future, you're going to get the
Uh-huh.
same reality. So you have to have a personality shift. You got to have a state change, a trait change in order to
Yeah.
have a different reality. Otherwise, you're just going to keep creating the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, like to me, I've not spent much time in his work, but just the title of the one book, I don't know if he chose the title, but I think it summarizes the
Breaking the
breaking the
habit.
habit of being yourself.
Yeah, perfect title. Yeah.
Breaking the habit of being.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is the NeuroVIZR, to get slightly neurological, is predominantly what's called a bottom up stimulation. Bottom up, sometimes called outside in, but bottom up correlates to what's called top down. And both are real. You can't have one or the other. They exist together, but it's a question of dominance. Another way of saying it is that there are many neuroplastic techniques that are psychological, where the NeuroVIZR in its neuroplastic techniques is neurological. It's not psychological. Top down, this goes into Carhart Harris and entropic brain and all these elegant theories, but that the the bottom up, you could say it's a lot of the sensory input, and the top down is a lot of cognition and thought and thinking. So the NeuroVIZR tries to bypass the thinking brain. What I describe sometimes, it's a way of knowing without thinking, that you arrive at a state of something, kind of understanding, like you get it, maybe, from Heinlein, you grok it, but it's not because you conceptualized it. It's like music or something like that, that it exists without having to think about it. As a matter of fact, many times, if you think about it too much, it gets in the way.
A couple other questions around this topic then, or a little shift.
Hmm.
You were talking about the shot of tequila or this brain break.
Yeah,
I think
thank you.
in one of your booklets that I have, "Help Me Now" is
Hmm.
kind of the title of it, and I've
Yeah.
seen it in our practice where our practitioners, and we use this for some patients before their treatment to because they come in with their in their head and they're overloaded, they're mentally overloaded. We wanted to help them get into more of
Hmm.
a relaxed, receptive state. So we'll start with the NeuroVIZR,
Yes.
de-habituation program, for example.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but just in general, if you could talk a little bit about there's the state change or state shift, so like you
Mhm.
said, it could last maybe a couple hours. You come in mentally overloaded, you come in really
Yeah.
angry, and it's just to give you a shift
Yeah.
before you come home and
Yeah.
see your family. And then to differentiate that between the trait change. if you could
sure.
talk about that a bit.
Yeah, yeah. The terminology that I normally use is short-term state shift, long-term trait shaping. Again, an analogy, again, to my back. Yeah, I broke my back when I was a young farm boy, throwing heavy hay and cracked a vertebrae. So my low back, I use it because it's real for me. Um, if you feel your discomfort in your low back, you could get up and do a couple of stretches and maybe a couple of twists or something, and it will relieve the discomfort in your low back for a short period of time. So you have created a short-term state shift in terms of the mechanics of your low back. However, if it's a problem chronically and your little quick back bends are not really giving you enough relief or not for long enough, then you go to somebody, a physio or a yoga therapist or something, and you go into a program of gradual change. You will shape the trait of how your low back functions. So you're going to have to move, you go in the elevator up to higher floors mechanically with your low back. Yes, the brain is physical. That's why it's the same analogy. You twist and turn in ways that you don't normally do for short periods of time. And bit by bit, that new information is ordered into the 10th floor and the 5th floor of how you sit and how you walk. And it is not a surprise that that incremental demand, slightly more than your normal behavior, will over time inform your body so that your pubococcygeal horizontal and all these things improve. So, and to return to an earlier statement, just about everything you want to know about your brain, not everything, but just about, you've already learned, whether you believe it or act upon it or not, like my non-existent exercise program. That's how the brain is. So what we do repeatedly will habituate us. And where we stretch our limit, where we explore, will also inform us so that this beautiful oscillation, you own the whole building. Every floor serves a purpose. These terms are used pathologically, and I don't mean them in that sense. The lower floors are described in terms of being autistic, and the higher floors are termed schizotypic. Now, we talk about autism and schizophrenia, but these words exist before pathology. Autism is a high reliance on repetitive, habitual, predictive behaviors. And like learning how to ride a bicycle, once you learn it, those patterned responses will serve you so you can ride the bike and chit-chat at the same time. You're not consciously aware all the time of exactly. However, when riding the bike, if you hit a pothole or a car zooms by, you better be able to swerve and, slide or hit the brakes or do something. So autistic is the lower range. Schizotypic is the higher range. Now, it becomes pathological if a person is more stuck in either of those ranges because they become extremes. So, this brain signal variability thing, there are lots of different forms like amplitude and frequency and network. Skip all that. There's a recently released study. I don't remember. I think it's MIT. In any case, so they plotted starting in like birth, youth, all the way to 90. So if a person does nothing about it, the ability to shift and change dynamically goes up and up and up and reaches an apex, a peak on that curve at around 45. And then to 90 goes all the way down to boom, 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 like holy shit. So if we don't do anything about it, we can expect that we have to move our home from the 15th floor down to the 10th floor, down to the 7th floor. Holy shit, I'm living on the 5th floor. This isn't the same view I had before. That we move from a more adaptable, flexible discovery state into a more highly ordered, predictive, and restrictive state neurologically with the brain. our ability to move up and down the elevator doesn't go up to the higher floors anymore. And that drop becomes precipitous with dementia.
Has anybody approached you then? This is a tangent here, but Alzheimer's, autism, schizophrenia, that population to see if the NeuroVIZR can
Yeah,
make changes.
informally, yes. We
Okay.
have to tread cautiously here because the NeuroVIZR is not a medical device.
It's a well-being
And
device.
so both legally and ethically, we resist and cannot make claims or promises. But I
Okay.
get a lot of
I,
personal.
no, and I thank you for that. I'm going to clarify the question. Not somebody contacting you say, I know or I have or autism, can I use it for that person? I mean a actual institution that says they want to study the device in this
Yeah,
population. Is
not
that
yet.
okay?
Thing,
All
but
right.
I have a sort of a last minute reference and maybe a conceptual challenge. Out of MIT, many people are all hot now about 40 hertz because of the rodent studies and
Right.
now replicated in humans at a reasonable level, that 40 hertz light and sound actually seem to improve the garbage collecting of amyloid plaque so that it seems to be really good. I would make a challenge to that if anybody's listening. The idea of a perfect integer brain frequency of 40 hertz, I think, is a mathematical lie of convenience, that the brain is more like shimmering and algorithms will pick up this rainstorm of electrical activity, and anything that is in and around 40, the algorithm will average it down to report a 40. So we discard decimal points. I bet, and if anybody's willing to fund a study, let's do it, that I bet that a range in and around, say, from 35 hertz to 45 hertz, with at least 2 decimal points, I think it would outperform pure, exact 40 hertz.
Oh, so you
I,
like the idea of having even the like gamma, which is 40 hertz, there's a range for it. So rather than just sending 40 hertz,
yeah,
you like the idea of the range because that is kind of how the brain is. It's shimmering as
it
you
isn't
described.
kind of, it is
Yeah.
exactly the way the brain
So the
is.
brain
And gamma,
doesn't
of
just have
course,
it. Okay.
gamma is a range.
Yeah.
Is a range. I looked at a study recently where, if I can remember the numbers, a person, say, of your age, the response to the gamma range networking is around 36 to 38 hertz. And for my age, because I'm older than you, that it's around like 32 to 35 hertz, 32 to 34 hertz. So, 40 hertz is the kind of regal concept of a gamma stimulation. I could be wrong. Anyway, that I think we're learning a lot. And I think that we may be averse to decimal points because we want things to be simple. But, all these sound synthesizers and music programs, if you chose violin, it kind of sounded like a violin, but it really didn't. Why? Because it was too perfect.
Mhm.
There's no violin in the world that is exactly that whole integer frequency. Even pitch perfect people, how many decimal points do you want to throw away to be correct? So I think that adaptability, complexity, and change is the game. But you listen, you've got all 20 floors of the building. Enjoy them.
So before we wrap up, I do have one more question on this our whole topic, and I'm curious,
Sure.
how do I explain the difference? It's come up a couple times where I introduce the NeuroVIZR, and somebody says,
Yeah.
"Oh, I did this. I think it's called the Lucia. It's a spinning disc."
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
What's the difference? Because I tell them I think that one's more of an entrainment versus an engagement device, but I'd like to
Mhm.
be able to give them an accurate. And I'm putting you in a position where, because you have your company, that's a different company. I'm not asking why
Yes.
is it better. I'm asking why it's different. People can decide whether it's better or not. But why?
Okay.
What's different between these devices? Because people say I've already done that. I know what it's like.
Yeah. Everything is what it is. And you can have that be positive or negative. It's kind of up to you. A hammer is great with a nail, but for a screwdriver is like probably doesn't do the same job. They're both great tools. So forget about brand names. When it comes to signaling, oh man, it's a big topic. You can have classic entrainment where it repeats, and the better and the simpler the repetition, the better it works. And you get entrainment. You get coaxed towards a certain state. How you respond to it is another issue. Then you've got randomized, where any sort of signaling will create dissociation and kind of a separation from how you normally process information. It kind of puts you in a limbo state, and you shouldn't do that too much, because dissociation is when you begin to distance yourself from your experience. So even psychologically, it's a bad state. Ketamine is classically dissociative. It's not really a psychedelic. So at one end, you've got highly ordered. On the other extreme, you have highly disordered. Then you've got in the middle, which is where the storytelling starts. So I can say with the NeuroVIZR, the difference is the story that is told is based on a neuroplastic principle that it introduces, and then it disorients yourself to get attention. Then it drops in the main driver. Then it tests the main driver. Then it rewards it if you come back to the driver, and then it's reinforced. It's actually a neurological story. It isn't that it is like a story. The way we make stories is because of our neurology. So the Lucia is not a great storyteller by my estimation. What it does is it moves into a little bit more of a dissociative state, and it's very easy to create a temporary hypnagogia, the hypnagogic state, which is like a one foot in the known and 1 foot in the unknown, and it's beautiful. It's an elegant device as hardware. It's very big. You can't put it on your head, and it's quite expensive. That is what that is. And there are other similars. So I came up with the term brain engagement because of the principle from neuroplastic processes, where you have to first engage the brain with attention, and then you go into the enrichment process, where with attention, what do? Like, I could walk up to you, and probably I wouldn't. I could walk up to you and slap you one in the face. I can get your attention. Now that I've got your attention, what do? What's the purpose? So just because there is flickering light, it's like, okay, sound. Let's make it really simple. There is sound that we would call noise. Then there's sound we would call music. And once you go into the music, there are different types of musics. Some will make you want to dance. Some will make you want to lay down and relax. So it's the construct of the flickering light that makes the message or the effect. So just because it's flickering, anywhere from incredibly ordered, classic brain entrainment, or purely randomized dissociative states, then you've got what's the story that it's telling. And the story that the NeuroVIZR tells is one of neuroplastic change, short and long term. It's a really big topic, and we're only beginning to learn about it. That just because somebody bangs on a drum, we'll say, well, I've heard drumming before. Well, not like this drumming.
Right. So and I appreciate that, because they both have flickering light, and that's where there's a lot of similarities, but then there's a lot of differences. And so thank you. I just wanted to have some language to explain when people say, I think I've done this already, or I've done this before.
Yeah.
And I've done the Lucida, or is that what it's called? I've done that where it's
Lucia or Lucia, depending you want to get classic. Now they have a lesser, smaller model, because the other one is massive, and it was like 21,000.
24, I think it was at one time.
24,
US.
I mean, in Canadian, I don't even know.
Okay, so again, just as you said, there's a place for that, and yours is different. I know when you build something or you have something, if they're not the same, you don't want them to be considered the same if they're different. Yours is, and I just want to understand the difference. So yours, as you use the term brain engagement, what you're doing, and you're
I would say it's
unsticking that brain. And so this idea again is the intention for this wellness device is, to give people an opportunity for focus and clarity, so they can have some creative flow, feel calm and relaxed, so improve your mood. And with sleep, I know we're kind of at our time, but I have one more personal question, and I'm curious.
Go ahead.
is I'm trying to understand my brain, and I think other people have had this experience as well. So I'll
Sure.
share my personal experience. There are times when I've done this where it feels like I dissociate. I'm in the prime, I'm in the experience,
Yeah.
and it's like I'm gone, and I kind of
Yes, you
come
are.
I come through at the end with the bird chirping, whatever, or
Yeah,
just
whatever.
throughout. I'm doing my best to focus, and I'm just having weird hallucinations. And I'm a, part of me at one point like, oh, this is cool. I'm having like altered states, and then I'm like, you know what? My brain is, I'm a lazy, my brain's getting worked out here. This is probably like, the trainer's like really pushing me and I'm trying to run away and get off the bike.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, what do you,
What's that?
what do you think's
Yeah.
happening when there's that disassociation or just really going into some weird memories during some of
Yeah.
these sessions?
Yeah. You're slipping into a hypnagogic state,
Okay.
and that's not a bad thing.
Okay.
And I experience it sometimes. For me, there is a reflection of the degree of vitality and or fatigue. That the recognition of state is really elusive because we oftentimes have learned to not pay attention to how we feel. And I'm not getting too touchy-feely, but many of us are fatigued, maybe sleep deprived, or sustained stress states, and we don't realize that our body, including our brain, would just like to stop it. And this is not the only reason that happens, but that's one of the reasons that I notice is that if I'm in a lower and quote unquote lower energy or actually fatigue state for any number of reasons, usually sleep, if the sleep isn't adequate or if there's sustained stress, that there's a fatigue. And that as the session is going on, you just go bye-bye. And to me, it reflects more of a vital state than a temporary vital state more than a consistent process. Now, I'll use another two terms, and I'll go back to physical exercise as the analogy. There is neuroplastic capacity and neuroplastic demand. And think of lifting weights, that we have a certain weightlifting capacity, and then comes the weightlifting demand. At a certain point, we realize, I realize, I'm not as strong as I thought uh, I was, or I used to be, muscle memory and all of that. So partly it's a conditioning process. And conditioning processes now with sports medicine, we realize that more is not better, that high level athletes will have hard days, easy days, and off days in their training. And the off days are also training. They're integration periods and recovery periods. So in the same way that if you are exercising your body, you'll get to learn about your body. And you'll start to see what kind of exercise, I used to get asked, what's the best exercise? I said, it's easy. They say, bullshit. What is it? I said, the best kind of exercise is the one you're going to do. And
Excellent. I love that.
yeah, yeah. So it's the same thing with your brain.
Yeah.
What kind of brain demand, brain exercise, and you're going to find that on certain days you can power lift or you can do legs really good, and other days it's like, why is it hard? Well, because of all the stupid things you've been doing, or it's not stupid. It's just that there are circadian undulations,
Right.
seasonal, and all of that. So my recommendation to myself and others to not idealize yourself, to not idealize performance. Some days you'll just be there in a NeuroVIZR session and it's crisp and you love it. And then you go into the brain time and you're in deep meditation. Other days you're just like a dope.
Hmm.
And there are dopey days. Don't worry about it too much. However, incremental training makes incremental change, and incremental change will compound into big change. And that way, I call it life on Earth.
Life on Earth. I love it. Garnett, thank you so much for taking the time with me today. And again, because we already had our interview, so to do this again, I appreciate it. I enjoyed the first time and I really enjoyed this time. Hope our listeners enjoy this. They
You're
can,
really easy to be with, buddy. I got to tell you, it's
oh,
really easy
thank you.
hanging with you. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
that.
All right. That's the Canadian thing, maybe. Maybe.
I don't know.
All right,
I don't
because
know.
I
Let's
neurovisor
not
before
push that ideal.
I neurovisored before I got on.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to let you guys know that I have a few blogs about the NeuroVIZR, so I'm having fun blogging about it. And you can go
Mhm.
directly to the neurovizor.com website as well.
Sure.
And we'll
Thank
put
you.
that in the show notes to learn about the device. And Garnett's really good at putting out articles. He blogs regularly. I'm signed up, so I get to read the research he's reading. He
Yeah.
summarizes and he shares the news and podcasts he's on too. So if you really want to do a deep dive in neuroplasticity and more information about the NeuroVIZR, you should follow him.
Yeah, we have this community, this circle community thing that we're developing. Yeah. And right now, I think we're going to flip that. In the beginning, it was for people that have a neurovisor. I say, well, come on, I love learning. Let's share. So I don't know if they've triggered it yet, but I've asked, just open it up. Anybody can not only go to the website, but they go into the NeuroVIZR circle community. If you don't know how to get in there, neither do I. You can ask customer support. But yeah, and the most recent one that I'm having a good time with, part of a course, is the prehistoric brain. Have you
Okay.
bumped into that one yet?
Is that the course or is it a post that you have?
Well, it's okay. I did the course on basic concepts, engage, enrich, and enjoy. And
I
there's
got
a new
that.
course I'm developing called Basic Science.
But that's not in the circle yet, or is it?
I don't know. I have
I'll
to
look.
ask,
I'm
you
gonna look
know.
right as we're talking. I'm gonna look because I
Okay, yeah, because there's a new course I'm wanting to put into Circle called Basic Science. We have basic concepts and now a new
all
one
that's in
called
there right now
Basic.
I see is basic concepts, right? As of this
Okay,
recording.
yeah. So we're building it inside, but yeah, Basic Science is the prehistoric brain. That's one section. Then we have the 20th century brain, and then I'm working now on the 21st century brain to give us the science background. Yeah, the nerd stuff.
Yeah,
But I'm totally engrossed by the section, the prehistoric brain. It's so cool.
I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to reading. I love that you distill it down too, so I appreciate you doing that kind of work. And
yeah.
obviously you
Well, you're
love it, you're
welcome.
passionate about it, so I'm sure it's fun for you. The effort you put into that, it's kind of you're doing what you love, which is you can see that.
Yeah, that's true. I do love it. I
All
do
right.
love it.
All right.
Okay, buddy.
Until next time.
Bye bye.
Thank you.